I never meant to bother her that morning. I was just carrying my laundry basket down the narrow back stairs, still half asleep. The hallway smelled like detergent and her jasmine soap, something delicate that always made me slow down, like I'd stepped into someone else's house. She was already in the laundry room, standing by the dryer in a pale blue robe and slippers, her hair still wet like she just stepped out of the shower. We both froze, not awkward, just not fully awake. She didn't say, "Good morning," right away. She held an unfolded towel in her hands like it was a question she hadn't decided how to answer. "Sorry," I said, and stepped back with the basket. "Didn't know you were down here." She almost smiled. "It's fine. Come in before someone sees you." Her robe slipped a little on her shoulder when she said it. Not on purpose, more like gravity was participating in the conversation. She didn't fix it. Just turned back to the dryer and pulled out another towel. I crossed the room, careful not to brush past her. She noticed my empty coffee mug and nodded at it. "Long night?" "Yeah. A bit." She didn't ask why, and I didn't offer. She just placed the warm towel in a neat pile, her fingers smoothing the corner like she was thinking about something else. The dryer hummed. Everything in the room felt slow, like the day hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. We've been neighbors for 7 months. She rented me the downstairs unit without asking too many questions. We don't talk much. A wave in the hallway. The occasional, "Need anything?" when a storm knocks out the power. But lately I've started noticing things. The way she steps barefoot onto the porch at night, holding a cup of tea like it's a small ritual. The way she glances at my window before she goes back in. Sometimes I wonder if she knows I see her. She pulled the last towel from the dryer and exhaled softly, almost like a laugh. "Your turn." I loaded my clothes in and pressed the start button. The sudden noise made both of us flinch. "Sorry," I said again. "You apologize too much," she said, but her voice was gentle. She brushed past me on her way out, her robe grazing my arm. For a second, I forgot what I was doing. I stood there, holding the empty basket, staring at the door she had just gone through. After she left, I sat on the metal chair near the washer, scrolling through my phone without reading anything. I almost texted a friend I haven't spoken to in months. Wrote "hey" in the box. Deleted it. Wrote it again. Deleted it. Eventually I put the phone in my pocket and listened to the dryer rumble. By the time I brought my clothes back upstairs, her door was closed. Around noon, I walked to the little coffee shop on Elm, the one where the owner still writes orders on paper and mispronounces my name every time. It didn't matter. I liked the familiarity of it. The way no one made eye contact for too long, like looking directly at someone might make the day go off track. I sat at the corner table with my coffee and stared out the window at the laundromat across the street. People were coming and going in the rain, shaking umbrellas like dogs drying off. I watched one woman drop her keys and laugh to herself before picking them up again. Something about it made me think of her, my landlady, and how she didn't fix her robe when it slipped. Like she didn't mind being seen. I reached for my phone without thinking. Before I could unlock it, a new message flashed on the screen. "Are you home? I burned something. Could use a second opinion." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I stood up, left my coffee untouched on the table, and started walking back. I found her in the kitchen, the smell of burnt toast and something sweeter, like cinnamon, clinging to the air. She was perched on a stool, one hand holding a mug, the other twisting the edge of her robe. "Thought I'd ruined breakfast," she said, voice quieter than I expected. "It's not as bad as I thought." I set down the bag of groceries I had grabbed on the way, fumbling with the paper bags so I didn't have to meet her eyes for too long. "You want help?" I asked. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "No. Actually, can you taste this? I wasn't sure how much cinnamon to put in." I leaned over, spooning a small bite. It was surprisingly good, sweet but not too much, warm in a way that felt safe. She watched me, tilting her head slightly, and I caught the way her gaze lingered on my hands, as if noticing the way they shook a little when I held the spoon. "Not bad," I said. "Better than my attempts at cooking." Her laugh was soft, almost apologetic. "I used to bake with my daughter, when she was little. She always overdid it, and I let her." Maybe I still let her. I paused, noticing the sudden quiet in her tone. She wasn't telling me the whole story, not really, but something in her eyes made it feel heavier than the words. I wanted to ask more, but the right question never came. I just handed her the spoon back, and she nodded, folding her hands around the mug like it was a shield. We sat at the counter together, either speaking for a long while. Steam from our mugs curled between us. I kept thinking about how odd it was to be here, how strange and unremarkable at the same time, just a small kitchen, a burnt slice of toast, and a woman a decade older than me with a quiet air that somehow made my chest tighten. She shifted, glancing at the clock. "I should probably finish cleaning up before my ex comes by, again." My stomach nodded. There it was, the line I wasn't supposed to cross. Divorced, complicated, with a life that wasn't mine. Still, I felt myself leaning just a little closer, drawn to the spaces she didn't fill with words. I helped her load the dishwasher, awkwardly matching her movements, feeling the brush of her sleeve against my arm more than once. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was charged. Finally, she wiped her hands on a dish towel, handing it to me with a small smile. "Thanks for helping," she said. I hesitated, my fingers brushing hers as I took the towel. The contact was brief, almost accidental, but the warmth lingered. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary, a tiny, knowing smile in her eyes. Then she looked down at the counter, stirring her mug. And I realized I didn't want to leave, even though I knew I probably should. I hadn't planned to linger, but her kitchen smelled like something warm and familiar, and I didn't move toward the door right away. She was leaning against the counter, arms crossed loosely, watching me stack the last of the plates. I thought she looked quiet, waiting. Or maybe she was measuring me, deciding if I was safe to let in. "Coffee?" I offered, almost instinctively. She shook her head, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "No, not right now." I nodded, pretending to busy myself with the sponge. Every movement felt heavier than it should, like gravity had decided to pay attention to us both. My chest tightened when our hands brushed over the sink, quick, fleeting, but I caught a tiny shiver in her shoulder, almost involuntary. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, crowded with things we weren't saying. A stack of mail on the counter, a mug left drying, a loose thread on her robe, all small, quiet markers of a life that didn't include me, yet somehow did right then. I wanted to ask something. Anything. But the words died before leaving my mouth. I could feel her eyes flick toward mine, then away, tracing the ceiling, the clock, anything but the tension hovering between us. Footsteps in the hallway. Her brow furrowed. "Oh, that's my friend. She said she dropped by?" I nodded, silently retreating toward the door, feeling the space between us snap back into its usual proportions. She moved quickly, adjusting her robe, smoothing the fabric over her shoulder, like she hadn't just invited me into a private moment. The friend's knock was light but insistent. I waited near the doorway, my fingers tracing the edge of the frame. My heart had a rhythm that didn't match the clock on the wall. "Thanks for stopping by," she said to me quietly, almost under her breath, before opening the door. I lingered a second too long, caught in the warmth of her small gesture. She glanced back, eyes soft, almost, but not quite, an invitation. My hand itched to brush a stray hair from her face, to reach for her, and she looked like she might let it happen. Almost. The hallway light fell across her, highlighting the curve of her jaw, the line of her neck. I imagined leaning in, letting my lips hover just above hers, feeling that pause stretch forever. Her gaze met mine again, quick, deliberate, and something unspoken passed between us, curiosity, desire, hesitation. I pulled back before it could become more, stepping into the hallway. "See you later," I said, voice low, uneven. "Later," she replied, and for a moment her lips curved in a small, knowing smile. Then the door closed, leaving me outside with my hands in my pockets, a shiver running down my spine. I stood there longer than I should have, thinking about what almost happened, the warmth, the silence, the small ache in my chest that didn't have a name yet. I found her on the small bench by the park behind the building, the late afternoon sun laying long shadows across the pavement. She'd brought a thermos of tea, and the lid rattled softly when she set it down. "You always take this route?" I asked, nodding toward the path lined with maples. She shrugged, fingers curling around the thermos. "Sometimes. It's quieter. Less everything." We sipped in silence. Steam rose in thin ribbons, carrying a faint hint of chamomile. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt heavy, like they'd break the calm. "I saw you talking to your friend yesterday," I said finally, testing the air. Her fingers paused on the lid. "Oh." Her voice was small. "Yeah." I could feel the shift in her posture before I could even read her expression. Not irritation exactly, but alert. Guarded. My chest tightened. I realized I hadn't understood how fragile this was, the way she let me in, just a little, and how quickly it could close. I mean, I stumbled. I don't like feeling like I'm replaceable." Her eyes lifted to mine, soft but searching. She didn't speak. She just let the words hang in the space between us, letting me notice them, letting me notice myself. "I shouldn't say that," I murmured. Say it," she said, quieter than the wind through the branches. I swallowed. "It's weird. I know. I like being around you more than I should." Her hand shifted on the thermos. She didn't pull away, but she didn't reach for mine either. A tiny hesitation, and yet, the moment felt fragile and monumental at the same time. "More than you should," she repeated, almost as if testing the truth of it. Her voice trembled just slightly. I wanted to take her hand. I wanted to lean in and let the air between us thicken. I wanted her to say something that would let me cross that invisible line. But my throat closed, and all I could do was watch her, tracing the line of her jaw in my mind, the curl of her fingers around the thermos. I'm scared," she whispered finally. "Of messing this up. Of losing control." I nodded slowly. My own fear mirrored hers, though it was quieter, unspoken. The bench felt smaller, the world reduced to two people, to a thermos, to the fading warmth of sunlight. "I'm scared too," I admitted, voice low. "Of saying the wrong thing. Of making it real." Her eyes searched mine, full of hesitation and something else, something raw. I felt the air tighten, every unspoken word heavy between us. A leaf drifted down from the tree above, landing softly on the thermos. She glanced at it, then back at me, and I thought for a moment she might reach across the space. And then she asked, not with words, but with the tilt of her head, the half-smile, the pause, "Do you really want this?" The next week, she stopped inviting me into her apartment. I noticed it first when I knocked on her door after the laundromat, the basket heavy in my hands. No robe on the hook, no faint scent of jasmine wafting out. Just the dull click of the deadbolt, and the soft echo of silence. I lingered on the landing, listening to the faint hum of her television somewhere deeper in the apartment. She hadn't opened the door. Didn't call back. I left the basket outside, half expecting her to appear and ask me in. She didn't. When we did cross paths in the hallway, she moved with a light, careful step that avoided me. Eyes forward, a polite nod instead of her usual quiet smile. I wanted to ask why, but the words caught in my throat. I imagined reasons. Maybe she thought I was overstepping. Maybe it was her ex again, needing attention. Maybe she had a child I hadn't noticed, waiting upstairs. Or maybe she'd simply realized I wasn't supposed to be here, in the way I wanted to be. I kept showing up quietly. At the park bench, at the coffee shop, at the laundromat. I'd sit with my coffee, staring at her door across the hall, half expecting her to step out, robes slipping, smile soft and knowing. But she never did. Then one afternoon, I saw her from across the street, speaking with a man whose hand brushed hers in the casual familiarity of old friends. I couldn't read her face clearly, but something in her posture stiffened when she noticed me watching. I wanted to turn around, leave it behind. Instead, I watched until they disappeared into a cafe. My chest tightened with a strange, quiet ache, not quite heartbreak. Not even jealousy, really. Just paused anticipation, suspended. That night I drafted a text I couldn't send. "Do you still want me to taste your cinnamon toast?" I stared at it for 10 minutes, deleting it and rewriting it half a dozen times. In the end, I put the phone on the counter, unread messages piling up like crumbs I couldn't brush away. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The apartment below me smelled of coffee in the morning, but she wasn't there to pour it. The hallway light flickered, my steps echoing too loud in the empty space. I imagined her moving through the rooms, careful, deliberate, letting some small piece of herself stay hidden. I stopped going to the park bench. I stopped showing up at the coffee shop. The laundromat became my silent companion, folding clothes in rhythm, pretending nothing had changed. And yet, every time I passed her door, every time I heard a faint creak in the hallway, a tiny part of me expected her to open it. To pull back the silence, and invite me in like she had before. The basket of laundry waits in my arms, the thermos of tea untouched on the counter in my mind. I fold the clothes slowly, careful with each crease, imagining the warmth she once shared in passing moments. But the door remains closed out. I found her in the kitchen again, late afternoon light slipping across the countertop. She was arranging mugs in a row, humming softly, a sound I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I hesitated in the doorway. My hands itched to reach for her, to bridge the space, but I wasn't sure if she wanted me there. "Hey," I said finally, voice low. She looked up, eyes catching mine for a fraction of a second longer than usual. A small nod, nothing more. I stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. I've been coming by too much." She set the last mug down, brushing her hands against the counter. "I wondered when you'd notice." The words made me laugh softly, almost without thinking. She tilted her head, waiting, and I realized that waiting had been the hardest part. All the moments of silence, all the things unsaid, had led here. "I like being here," I admitted. "With you. Even if it's complicated." She didn't answer immediately. Just let the air settle between us. I watched the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, how the corners of her eyes softened. "You're younger," she said finally. "You don't have to, I know," I interrupted gently. "I know the risks. But I want to be here anyway. With you." Her hand lingered near the counter, brushing a stray dish towel. Then, slowly, she reached for it. Not the towel, my hand. The contact was soft, careful, and it made the world narrow to the width of her fingers against mine. I felt the pulse of her hesitation, and the weight of my own. We weren't saying everything, we didn't have to. The truth was already there, between our hands, in the pause that stretched longer than the words. "I was scared," she whispered. Of messing this up. Of being too much." "You're not," I said quietly. "Not for me." She looked down at our joined hands and then back at me. The faintest smile curved her lips. Not flashy, not dramatic, just real. Human. "I'm okay," she said softly. "Okay," I echoed. For a moment, that was enough. No grand confessions, no rushed promises. Just two people, sitting in a quiet kitchen, letting the weight of months of hesitation settle. The steam from our mugs rose between us. Outside, the street moved on, indifferent. Inside, we stayed there, anchored by a small, deliberate connection that didn't need words to make it matter. I let go first, slowly, reluctantly. She stayed still for a beat, then exhaled and touched the back of her hand to mine one last time. And it was enough. Weeks passed. Or maybe months. Time lost its sharp edges, measured instead in small rituals. 8:47 a.m. Walks to the corner cafe, Black coffee for me, chamomile tea for her, the bench by the park still waiting in the same quiet corner. She moved through her apartment with the same calm precision as always, but now I noticed the way she left her favorite mug out for me, how the kettle whistled before I even realized she'd started it. We didn't need to announce anything. We just fit. One rainy afternoon, I arrived at the laundromat carrying a basket heavier than usual. She was there already, leaning against the wall with her robe pulled tight, hair tucked under a towel. She smiled when she saw me, not an invitation, not a confession, just the small recognition of someone who belonged in her world now. "Coffee?" she asked, without hesitation. I nodded. "Black." We walked together to the corner cafe. The streets glistened with rain, umbrellas bobbing like bright markers in the gray. We spoke in fragments, half questions, laughter tucked quietly in pauses. When she brushed her fingers against mine by accident, or maybe not by accident, I let the contact linger, warm and real. I thought about the first time I saw her robe slip, about the stolen afternoons on the park bench, about the silent tea we shared after the nearly confessions, the avoided texts, the doors left closed. All those moments weren't forgotten, they had simply become threads in the quiet fabric of us. Later, in her kitchen, she stirred her tea while I poured black coffee into my mug. We didn't talk about the past, or the risk, or the things that could have gone wrong. We just existed in the space we'd built, small, steady, unspoken. A leaf drifted against the window, tapping softly. She glanced at it, then at me. I caught her eye for a beat, and it was enough. The understanding of months, the comfort of mutual patience, the gentle acknowledgement that we'd found a rhythm that didn't need words. Sometimes she teased me about leaving the lid off the thermos. I teased her back about oversteeping her tea. And in that quiet exchange, there was laughter, warmth, and a kind of safety that had never existed before. Evenings became easier, the apartment calmer, the world outside still moving too fast, but in here, in this routine, in these small rituals, we found a steady pulse. A home made of coffee, tea, pauses, and the occasional lingering touch. I realized that what we had wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was earned. Built in glances, soft silences, shared chores, quiet moments of being seen. And one evening, as we walked past the park bench where it all had started, I didn't say anything. She didn't either. We just sat, shoulders brushing, mugs in hand, watching the last light settle across the pavement. I understood then that love didn't need grand declarations. It only needed to be known, quietly, between two people who chose each other, again and again, in the small ordinary ways that made life feel full.